everybody. It's the Cryptid Huntress. Welcome in to our Saturday night show. I am so glad you guys are here. Boy, do we have a banger of a show tonight. We have a couple of amazing guests tonight. You guys are not going to believe who I convinced to come on the show tonight. It is going to be so wild. We are going to be talking about backwoods cults and potential. I'm so sorry. My dog just started. My dog was in here. So backwoods cults, Freya. I'm so sorry. Backwoods cults and cryptids. Okay, cryptids being conjured potentially. Okay, good God. Of course this happens. Our neighbors next door are having a big old party with no regard for the neighborhood. Okay. So we're having a great show tonight, and I actually have Derrick here, who is the fifth great grandson of John Bell of the Bell Witch case, okay, out of Tennessee. So I have Derrick here. I met Derrick on Esoteric Atlanta through our mutual friend Bryce, and so I am so excited to have him here. And he also lives up at the LBL in Kentucky. So gosh, we have a lot to talk about. I also have my resident expert on the occult. I have Dr. Dennis Carroll here in the studio as well. So yes, we have a powerhouse here again tonight, and we have a lot to talk about. So if you guys would like to follow along with all of my shows, please go to my website. That's thecryptidhuntress.com. You can find all of my shows there, and my schedule of events, everything I'm going to be doing, everywhere I'm going to be. Also, if you'd like to support what I'm doing, I have a Patreon. That's the Cryptid Huntress on Patreon. And I also have a shop that's called War Woman Goods. And you do get free merch with every purchase. Okay. All right. Well, I am actually going to be in Nevada coming up this week. I hope that you guys are going to join me in Reno, Nevada next week. Next weekend, I will be in Nevada broadcasting live with Spaced Out Radio, but I will have a show, a brand new show for you guys that will be premiering next Saturday night, and it's going to be really good. So I will be in the chat that night next Saturday, but I'll be here all next week. Okay, so don't y'all worry. I will always be here for you guys. Okay, well, let's get to our show tonight in hopes that my dog does not bark anymore tonight. Okay, so like I said, we're going to be exploring backwoods cults, okay, and the cryptid connection tonight. Now, my team, okay, one of my research teams, well, a few of us combined, couple of my teams have gone up and researched areas where there have been known satanic rituals done and stuff. It's not comfortable, y'all. It's not a good energy. But there are places where there are a lot of cryptid sightings, werewolves, Sasquatch, Dogman, you name it. So we're going to be talking about that tonight. Okay. Let's see. I guess you guys are familiar with the Bell Witch, okay? And maybe we'll ask Derrick about that when I pull him up tonight. Okay, so let's just go ahead and pull my guests up tonight. Okay, so I'm going to pull up Derrick. He lives up at the LBL, and this is the descendant of John Bell. You guys, I just love that. Hey, Derrick.
Hey.
Hey, what's up? Thank you for being here. We also have Dr. Dennis Carroll here as well, because we need some occult knowledge.
Good evening,
tonight.
everybody. Good evening.
Hey, Dennis.
I'm excited. This is going to be, I think, a good show. Definitely.
Oh, it's always a good show. It is. Well, before we get started, Derrick, you're brand new to the channel, and I would love for you to kind of introduce yourself and just tell us a little about yourself, because you have a lot of interesting things going on.
My name is Derrick. I am from Kentucky. I say / Tennessee. I was born in Kentucky, grew up in Tennessee, right on the border here, near LBL. I'm not sure that I'm really an expert on anything, but I've had many supernatural and paranormal experiences in my lifetime. So I kind of find myself, anytime I get into these conversations, I might not know what I'm going to say, but I always find some connecting point from my personal experiences. And I actually just found out maybe within the past year, I would say, that I'm even related. Well, for one, I didn't even know about the Bell Witch story until the past year. And then I realized that I'm related to that family. And so long and behold, it's been running in my bloodline for a while. So it's a little bit about me. So here I am.
It runs in your family, and I love that. And I've done a show with you before with Bryce, and that was on Esoteric Atlanta, and we talked about the Beast of LBL.
Yeah.
Have you heard stories about the Beast of LBL up there before? And is it something that people talk about?
Okay, so before I heard it from you, I had never heard about the Beast of LBL per se. I had heard about murders that had happened in LBL, and on Esoteric Atlanta, I gave a brief explanation of a personal, I would call it like a 3-day haunting that happened from energy from LBL, something like attached itself onto me or like followed me from like right outside of the property of LBL. And I was seeing it like I can see things like psychically, like they come in like either like just thoughts or just like knowings or like visions. But I was seeing like demons or monsters like following me from the property. And then after that is whenever I saw something about you, Jessica, saying about the Beast of LBL. I'm like, oh, ding, ding. like there's something actually to it. And then I just started working at a resort like 2 weeks ago, right on the Kentucky Lake. And like where I eat lunch, I look across the lake and I see LBL. And there's a lady who works at the front desk, and her husband is the main manager of LBL. So I asked her, I was like, hey, ask your husband if she's ever heard of the Beast of LBL. And she was like, my husband has like the stickers. And she said that they get tons of emails of people asking about the Beast of LBL. And one of my coworkers, her and her boyfriend had gone on like a 2-month adventure of like trying to find the Beast of LBL on the property. So yes, so since I've known about it, I've been asking people, and it's like a real thing where people in this area, a lot of people do know about it. So
wow. Well, what is the word on the street? Did you happen to like kind of prod a little bit and say, hey, what do you think the Beast of the LBL is? Is this some kind of Dogman or a werewolf? I mean, did you question yet?
I heard Dogman, but honestly, like whenever I feel like the most people that I talk to, they don't. It almost seems like in most people's mind more of just like a story. It's like I don't feel like a lot of people who I've like talked to, they don't realize that it really is real. It seems like a lot of people like are interested, but I feel like for people to really get it, they have to have like maybe some type of firsthand experience, and not necessarily with the Beast of LBL, but with something supernatural for it to like open people's mind to be like, oh, this is not just like a fun thing that people talk about. It's actually real, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So
The interesting thing about the LBL, it's full of cemeteries. There are a lot of cemeteries and graveyards around it. That's an interesting connection. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is.
And you know, a lot of this dark magic and a lot of this stuff is done around cemeteries and places of the dead. You got a lot of dark magic connected to these things. And I've heard a theory now, you know, you hear different things, but I've heard the theory that this is something that was conjured up in the LBL. And it's not just something that naturally happened to be there. It's almost as if it has a dark black magic connection thing going on with it as well.
Yeah, I've heard that before too. And I want to thank Haley for that super sticker. Thank you so much, Haley. I've heard that as well. And I've also heard you mention, Derrick, you were on Bryce's show one day on a different show, not the one that you and I did together. But you guys were talking about a vampire presence around the LBL. Can you kind of talk about that if you're comfortable talking about it tonight?
Yeah.
Well,
So,
you know, when you get into witchcraft and stuff like that, there are different. We've talked to Jessica and I have talked about this before, and you probably may have heard this too, Derrick. You know, there are certain levels of dark witchcraft that you get into, and the higher up you go, the more power you obtain. You can become like you can embrace the wolf spirit, or you can embrace the vampire spirit, or whatever you know you tend to want. That's a connection with it too. You know, that you got to look at as well.
and actually a question for you on that. Well, I initially think, okay, like connecting with the wolf spirit as maybe not initially as like being per se like evil or satanic. So it makes me wonder. I'm like, why is it inherently evil to connect to the wolf spirit? You know what I mean? Is it always evil? Do you think?
Yeah.
It shouldn't always be evil, I wouldn't think, but I don't know. What do you think, Dennis?
Absolutely. I think, you got, and I have run into this demonology-wise, speaking in that sense. I have run into vampire spirits, and they're not just bloodsuckers. A lot of them can be what you would term psychic vampires, things that live off the essence, the life essence of people, or their energy, or something like that. So sometimes it's not usually a bloodsucker type. It can be the other thing as well. But these things can also inhabit people. And but what I'm saying also, like in the voodoo ceremonies, they allow these spirits in to take over them, in places like that. And here's the interesting thing: if you were to let that wolf spirit in, you would take on the attributes of a wolf. That was very, very much looked like a dog man in some aspects. When you think about it.
Yes,
yeah, that sounds. Oh, go ahead.
I'll say that I could see that kind of being like you imagine like animals and humans. It's like a human kind of diverting like backwards into the animal kingdom. It's like if you imagine like, what are we as humans? Like our ultimate goal is like to transcend the material realm, right? It's to eventually, so it's like almost like maybe like the satanic rituals, as you take on like the wolf spirit, you're kind of like diverting backwards, and maybe that's why it's demonic,
Right.
I don't know. Just
absolutely.
Yeah, Black Dragon, thank you for becoming a member of my YouTube channel tonight. That is really sweet. Yeah, it's okay. So we're on the LBL right now. So let's stick to the LBL for a minute and talk about, we're talking about backwoods cults tonight. And by cults, I mean, when I was thinking about you talking about the vampire motel that's over there and some of the vampire presence at the LBL, I had heard that before. Okay, I had heard that there was some vampiric activity there, blood rituals being done, and I was actually advised not to talk about it too much. Okay, because it can be very dangerous to talk about it. So I've been very hesitant to ever bring that up, ever. Dennis, what do you think about talking about it? Is this safe for us to even talk about right now?
Well, you got to remember one thing about witchcraft. It can be done from a long distance. It can be sort of what you might say, interstate. Definitely, if these people have something against you, they can send bad stuff your way. I've seen them attempt to do that many times. But I have been to some of these places out in the backwoods where some of these rituals have taken place, and it's never a good feeling when you walk into a situation like that. And like I've said before many times, I feel my own self there. And being in this for so many years, I've developed a sort of a sixth sense or something like this. I could feel like something watching me there. It was almost like there's a presence, and it's a brooding type presence there, and it's malignant, very malignant in that respect. And I think without a doubt, these people, wherever they hold their rituals, they call up guardians or things that will watch and guard these areas. So when you walk into that kind of an area, you're in a dangerous situation, whether you realize it or not, sometimes.
I've been seeing a video. There's a guy on TikTok that looks like he is having an anxiety attack every time he goes on there. But he was filming and he was feeling like he was being watched and being followed. And I don't recall exactly where he lived, but he caught what looks like a vampire on camera. And it looks like, I don't know if it's a woman or a man. It looked pretty kind of androgynous actually. But to me, I got a female vibe off of it. But it looks like a very malnourished human, but not human. And he actually got a shot of his pants. Yeah, he actually got a shot of its hands. It was pulling its hands out of his pocket, and it had black fingers and claws, and it was a very white, pasty looking person.
And when I saw that, Jessica, that reminded me of that thing we were talking about in Ohio. If you kind of zoom in and look at it a little bit closer, those are not fingers. Those look very much like claws, and that's what you see with that vampire thing. It looks very much like inhuman things. They're not regular human fingers; they're claws. That's what they basically are, and they were even dark, had a dark texture to them. Freaky looking stuff.
Now you're referring to the Dogman in the graveyard. Is that what you're referring to in Ohio? That it did look as though it had claws, and this is something that I did a show on Thursday night with Barry Littleton. That was a great show. If you guys missed it, please go back and watch it. But there's a video that two young ladies took while they were on their dinner break, and they drove through the cemetery in Akron, Ohio, at Green Lawn Cemetery. And as they're driving through, they saw what appeared to be, they thought it was a dirty lady, is what they said, a dirty lady digging feverishly into a grave.
It's a possibility that thing could have been sent there to retrieve something. In that respect, either leave something or retrieve something. It like I said, when you look at it, it looks like it's on a mission. Okay, it's very dead serious about what it's doing. So you kind of have to wonder, if maybe it is on some type of a mission sent there for a purpose to do something. I don't know. I don't know if that was if you can tell me if that was a fresh grave that it was digging. Was that a fresh grave, or it was not a fresh grave, or what?
It was actually there was nothing there. It was just sod with grass over it. There was that was an area where the burial plots were for cremains. So not a full body, but the ashes that are in urns would go in those plots. But that particular plot where it was digging had nothing in it. So and dogs, anything that has like canine senses I think they'd be able to smell that there wasn't anything there, but it was right beside a mausoleum full of bodies, apparently. But it was digging there, and there was nothing there, and it didn't cover anything up, kick dirt back over it. And so it made us wonder, like, well, okay, is it just a regular Dogman, or is this some sort of werewolf?
That's what impressed me about that so much, is the circumstances under which it was filmed. It kind of, you can tell. So many years I've seen a lot of these things. You can tell when something's set up, kind of a thing. You know what I'm saying? It's a setup. This didn't look like that to me, and that's why I took it so serious. It looks like the authentic thing. I can't say that for sure. I wasn't there, but it looks very authentic.
Well, hey, Jessica, I'm going to answer your question about the Vampire Hotel.
Oh yeah. Okay.
But Dennis, I have a story that's related to this about a fresh grave. That the fact that you asked that question, if it comes back up, I want to ask you a question about a fresh grave. But okay, so the vampire cult, it was a group of, I believe they were high school kids out of Murray, Kentucky, which is the city that I was born in. And long story short is that they were doing like some type of satanic rituals that is related to vampires. And there's a graveyard here in Murray that they used to do some rituals at. And I used to drive by that graveyard every day going to high school. And I didn't know about the vampire story until I was in college going here at Murray State. But they also would meet up in LBL at an old abandoned building, and they spray painted on the building Vampire Hotel. And so that's where the nickname the Vampire Hotel comes from, is from the vampire cult from Murray, Kentucky, going out and doing satanic rituals. And it ended with them going, one of the members of the cult, their family lived in Florida, and it ended with them going and murdering the mother and father of one of the occult members. So it wasn't just like some like fun and games like vampire cult. It was like the real deal. To where how I see it psychically is that I believe that they became like possessed and ultimately led to them going and murdering a mother and father, you know.
Well, some of these, organizations, Derek, are murder clubs. They get together to see how they can, artistically do people in. That I know that sounds bad, but that's some of the things that they're up to. And some of these cults, some of these so-called vampire cults are what we call living vampires. They're human vampires. In other words, they love the lifestyle, but they're not the real undead. Okay, kind of thing.
Right.
They're human vampires. They can be just as dangerous, and not more so, than an undead type vampire would be. Because these people are very satanic in what they're doing. And like I say, they get together with these rituals and these murder clubs and these things that they want to do together. It's some dark, dark stuff, and they have their places. They have their own symbols that they use, and you might need to study up on that some if you want to. It's very interesting. They have a language of symbols. They mark their areas and their territories. You're talking about vampire gangs, very much like motorcycle gangs in that respect. They even supposedly have wars sometimes against each other or have attacks, just like regular gangs, like the Bloods, the Crips, and all those. These are vampire gangs, though. That's the interesting thing about it.
Well, I was listening to William Nighthawk this past weekend, and he was talking about how there are buildings, or there's like under bridges sometimes, like or just on abandoned buildings, like you were talking about, Derek. They'll put like a V on it, or like a circled V or something like that. Like there's a symbol that they put to mark their territory in graffiti, just to let people know that they're there in their territory.
I have seen buildings marked like that. I've seen, and that reminded me when you said that about the vampire hotel thing. I have seen buildings marked, and that's their territory, and they're gang signs, just like you see the regular gangs use. Being in law enforcement, I learned a lot about the gangs that were around and all that, and how they operate. But you also have that aspect as well.
Yeah,
dark stuff.
Well, I like to always go back when we're talking about this topic. I talk about that. What was that guy's name? Bill Chinoblin or whatever, and that prophecy club, and he talks about the Brotherhood of Satan. And I know it's kind of heavy talking about Satanism and stuff, and that's not something that I enjoy talking about on my channel. But I think that we're here to talk about it tonight because it plays a big role, I think, in cryptids, okay, and in this vampirism that's going on. So I think it's important that we're going to put it on the table tonight, y'all, and talk about it a little bit because it is a real thing. And that the Prophecy Club, when he was giving that lecture, he was talking about how the different levels of the satanic brotherhood, you could become a vampire or you could become a werewolf at the higher levels. Okay. And so it's like an elitist type of thing, I guess, for that organization is to be able to transform.
Sort of like the Masons. It's kind of like the Masonic Lodge kind of thing. You got different levels that you can obtain in your power that you seek, but you got to do some horrific things to obtain those levels. That's the bad thing.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. We really don't want it. We don't want that to happen because it's that sounds a lot like skinwalkers, Dennis. It does. Okay, Derek. Let's talk about your fresh grave story. What's up with the fresh grave? Did you want to ask Dennis a question?
Okay, so I had an experience in a graveyard. I'm not gonna tell the whole story of how I ended up in the graveyard, but okay, so I tell people I don't know how to explain it, like, except for like to make it simplified. I've had many times in my life of going through like these it's usually 3 days. It's like a 3-day period of an intense like haunting to where I don't sleep because I'm so scared. I'm like, I can see demonic entities. I can, like, it's a full blown like episode, if you want to call it that. Well, one of them was here in Murray. I was in a graveyard. I ended up in a graveyard. It was not the graveyard of the vampire cult, but it was the most central point in Murray, Kentucky. There's this graveyard, and there was a fresh grave, And for some reason I go, and it's at nighttime. Okay. And I go and I feel the grave or the tombstone, and it's like blazing hot. I'm like, whoa. Okay. And it wasn't in the summertime. I mean, it could have been from the sun during the day, but I had a very like weird feeling when I touched it, and it was like super hot. It was a fresh grave. Well, and then I could see like this, like it was like a shadow figure. It was kind of like it looked like a human shape, but it was like super dark and fuzzy. And I knew that it was associated with this fresh grave. And I thought back onto this experience of just like trying to think, I'm like, what was going on that night, you know? And I've always, I can just like see that grave being this guy who was freshly buried. And I've always known that there was something to do with like the fact that he was freshly buried, but I don't have the knowledge to know like the significance of a fresh grave, you know? So whenever you said that, I was like, oh, maybe he knows something about a fresh grave.
Yeah. What do you think, Dennis?
Yeah. Well, you know, if you make, I don't know if you're familiar with the term, the goofer dust. Goofer dust is part of a spell or ritual thing that, especially in voodoo, they use the actual dirt from a grave. It has to be a fresh grave usually, but it has to be either the grave of a person, of an evil person, or a good person. Depending on like, if you want to make a love potion, you get it from a good person's grave. But if you want to like make a death curse or something, you get it from a bad person's grave. But the main ingredient, it has to be graveyard dust, depending on where you get it at. And I've talked about this before, and I have done a lot of classes and a lot of teaching classes out in cemeteries, paranormal classes. And I always, warn people, do not bring anything home from a cemetery. Whatever you find out there, leave it alone. Because a lot of times they will put what we call witch traps in these things. They will actually put cursed items, wanting you to pick it up and take it home with you. These people are very malevolent in the way they do these things. So be very careful. Don't ever take. But you can, having an experience like that in a cemetery does not surprise me, because these entities are drawn. That's their number one place. They're drawn to these places of the dead. There's a big connection with it for them. So whenever you go into a cemetery or a graveyard, you better kind of have your wits about you, because you never know what you're going to run into and something like that.
Yeah, and that night I did not have my wits about me at all. Because as I said, I was already in like in one of those like states of minds where I just call it like a 3-day haunting or something. So like I was already into like just like not a stable mindset whenever I entered into, but it tried to enter my body, but like the weird thing is like I was in a very like lighthearted mood during the entire time. I just started feeling super fearful, I started to feel like terror, like the state of terror, but I was still like lighthearted enough that I just started like dancing. I was like, just like get out. So like as it started to penetrate my body, I just started dancing, and I could still like feel it like around me, like it was like trying to get in, but it couldn't, and so it was like penetrating.
It was
never did.
It was a normal kind of a secondary reaction to something happening like that. You don't even think about it, Yeah, definitely. I have seen that happen with some people. You're sort of being attacked spiritually. Yeah. Some people handle it differently than other people, But I've often said that I don't know if you experienced this, and I have been attacked spiritually in that respect. It will sort of drop your blood sugar. It will make you feel kind of weak and all centered, And I always say it's very much like you eat a piece of chocolate or a piece of candy, or maybe drink a little brandy or something to get your reserves back up, because it takes a toll on you when you are hit spiritually. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's actually very similar to what we do when we're doing remote viewing and tuning into things psychically. The way to shut it down is to eat something. Okay, to eat something. What an interesting statement, because I've not heard that before, Dennis. But yeah, to eat something. Now, I have a question for you, Derrick.
Okay.
Do you think that, they say, I've had conversations with plenty of people about this, but, I come from a long line of people who have had paranormal experiences. I mean, the stories go back for generations in my family of paranormal occurrences at our homes, their homes, with like balls of fire coming out of the woods and circling the house it's upon somebody's death. Things like that. I mean, alien abductions in my family back in the 1980s. A lot of stuff has gone on, and I've had a lot of encounters myself. Well, see, you come from a long line of family, of a generations back, of the most famous haunting that is actually on a historical marker in the United States. Do you think that has something to do with you being haunted?
At this point, yes. I mean, or maybe not even like the point of me being haunted, but I think that me being so like hypersensitive to all of it, because yes, I would say for sure. And I mean, and I guess maybe even with like the whole John Bell, like the whole Bell Witch story and all of that. I mean, I would say actually, yes, like with me being haunted, like maybe like I guess like I'm not sure how curses work. I'm not sure if like curses like I don't know if they continue through like a family line or not, like based on like the curse. But I've thought about this a lot, and I know there's some type of connection. I just don't know exactly how it works. So I don't know how to explain like exactly how I see it, but I would say yes, for sure. I know that there's some type of connection. I just don't know exactly what it is.
Well, let me tell you this, Derrick, and I know this without a doubt, that the sensitivity is generic. It kind of runs through family lines, just like Jessica was talking about with her family. It runs through your genetic lines. And if you're very sensitive and open to these things, you're kind of fair game for some of this stuff, okay? And you need to realize that if you're very sensitive, just like Jessica said, and I have experienced this myself, it can attack you in different ways. But if you're very sensitive, you got to kind of learn and begin to deal with that, because that's part of your makeup. I've had people ask me, they say, "Oh, can't I know about this? Can I stop it?" I said, "No, I hate to tell you, you can't stop it because it's part of you, but you can get a hold on it. You can't get a handle on it, to a certain extent." And but this is definitely, runs through family lines without a doubt.
Well, there's Susan. Susan says there are generational curses. So yes, like
yeah.
So essentially, yes. So I guess and that's kind of what I sensed. I feel like there are generational curses. I just don't know how it works. But there's probably people like Susan and stuff who maybe are more in tune with like being able to like really see the nuts and bolts of like how it works.
I have run into generational curses, and they can be broken without doubt. I mean, no, it's not hopeless. They can be broken, but they can be very, very virulent in the way that they work. They can basically go from generation to generation, especially through the male line. Okay, more so than the female line. Why that is, I don't know, but that's the way that goes.
Yeah, that's pretty terrifying. Okay, well, if people can be cursed, and curses can be passed down generationally through bloodlines, what about the land? Okay, because a lot of the places where we have cryptid activity, it seems to have been cursed. Okay, cursed land. Now, whether that be by a medicine man or medicine woman, or by rituals, okay, ritualistic, or even bloodshed. Dennis, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, when it comes to something like the Bell Witch thing, to me, I would be very leery of living on that land, because doorways have been opened there, spiritual doorways, you might say, things that have been done there. They stain the land. And here's the interesting thing about what you mentioned there, Jessica, Derrick, about the land itself. Is incredibly hard to get rid of that stain on the land. It's more so, it's better to attack the generational curse through the human line, than it is to go after the land, because it seems like these things infect the very infection of the land itself. And many times, many times, I've had cases where that was the key, what may have taken place there on that property. And if dark magic was turned loose there by like the Bell Witch, in that respect, it's still there. Okay, it may not be quite as strong as it may have once been. That can happen, and sometimes it can get stronger, depending on if it's activated again for any purpose, you know. And you'd have to be very careful about letting people on the property that, you know, like dowsers or whatever, that they somebody that might stir it back up again. You wouldn't want that to happen, but it's there. It's always there, no matter what you do in that respect, unless it's absolutely cleansed the correct way. I wonder if that's ever happened there. You know,
Yeah.
it'd be interesting to find out.
Yeah, if it's ever been cleansed at the Bell Witch property.
Yeah, has it?
I don't think it
Yeah.
has yet. I mean, I have no idea, but I just don't feel like it has.
I tell you, we don't know in a place like that, Derek. We don't know what doorways have been open and left open in those respects. You know, that are still there. You know.
Yeah, I remember I had, you know, my team, we do this remote viewing stuff. I know I talk about remote viewing a lot. I don't apologize. Okay. One of my targets, I don't apologize.
If you go back and look at the case, John Bell was murdered. Okay,
Oh.
Basically that was really murdered by black magic, but it was murder. Okay, he was really done in by that, and that's not good, you know. And that alone would be enough to taint that land, you might say, you know.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, I got to take a second to say thank you to Boo the Beagle. Thank you, Jason. He said, you know, in the backwoods, you're also likely to run into cults of personality, radicals, criminals, and you know what, drug gangs and things. Yes, more, and that's why I carry a firearm with me when I'm in the woods. Okay, for that purpose. And so yes, we'll be safe. Thank you, Boo the Beagle.
In Kentucky, you got the cornbread mafia. In Kentucky, I don't know if you've heard of them, but you have some bad actors out there, not just in the occult and all that other stuff. You've got some bad stuff. You have the motorcycle gangs, you have the regular city gangs, you have the cornbread mafia, as they call them. You've got different types of bad actors out there, not just, you know, supernatural.
One, two,
that's bad enough.
With like related to LBL, the Kentucky Dam. I say I know this. I don't know this, but I just have a strong sense of that there's a lot of black magic where they're going on around the Kentucky and probably the Lake Barkley Dam, to where they're using they're essentially like these are like major natural like portals within the earth in these in the geographical location, and they're using the dams to channel all of that energy and to harness it and to invert it and to use they're using that for black magic rituals. I'm pretty sure.
That's a good point. You know, I mean, I know of, I've heard, because I've not been to the LBL, but I know a lot of cryptid researchers that go out there and people that are looking for a Dogman experience, basically. Okay. And I mean that in the nicest way. Okay. I mean it in a nice way. But I've heard that some of the people are really pushing the limits out there and doing stuff that could potentially be opening up portals, like using musical instruments and horns and things, and to attract the cryptids, the dogmen and the werewolves, whatever's out there. Now, when they're opening up these portals, I don't know if they even realize what they have to know what they're doing. But are they closing them down? You know, closing the portals down? I mean, I've just heard there's. Okay, I'm not like, my teams don't do this. Okay, I don't do this, y'all. I'm just saying, my team. I'm on 3 research teams. We don't do this kind of stuff. We don't go out there and taunt cryptids or try to bring them in. We go and observe and try to communicate sometimes if they're there. But there are people that will push it to the limits and do extreme things to get an experience with the cryptid. So if that means doing a satanic ritual or whatever, they may be doing it. I don't know. I'm not out there, so I don't know for sure, but I would assume that people go out there to do that sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, you know, these doorways are just like anything else. They can be closed once they're open, but there's a certain way you go about closing them. Some people foolishly open these doors and never close them. Very much like Ouija board use. You know, when you open a Ouija board, you address it and you open it. You officially open it, and then when you get finished with it, you got to officially close it. But some people doing a lot of these things out there, like you said, Jessica, they're fooling around with some stuff maybe they shouldn't be fooling around with. They're probably leaving a lot of these doorways open that are already there, some that are already there, and they're making the problem worse. In other words,
Mhm.
they're more of the problem than the solution.
Okay. Well, and Aussie Sue, thank you so much for that super chat. I'm so glad you're in here tonight. Thank you for being here, all the way from Australia. Okay. Well, okay. So it's not only the LBO where this is going on. I did mention a place where my team has researched before, and it's called Corpsewood Manor. I've done a show on that a long time ago, and I've talked about it a bit because it is an area where there was a Civil War battle. A lot of bloodshed went on up there, and it has been perpetuated, or it's perpetual bloodshed there. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that. Okay, when I had remote viewed it, okay, because that's what our team does when we go places. Okay, I had remote viewed it, and part of my data, this is a blind target when I did it. I picked up on, I heard it needs blood, or it requires blood, I think is what the quote was. It requires blood. So the land, the target was the land there at Corpsewood Manor where these two men were brutally murdered along with their dogs. They were friends with Anton LaVey. They had Baphomet on their window when you walked in their house. Okay, very much into the satanic stuff and into, let's just say, sex magic and stuff like that, I assume, because they had parties with that involved, and drugs were involved. I don't know if my kid's listening to this. I hope he's not. But things were involved, you know. But there's
Wherever blood is
perpetual
shed, Jessica, wherever blood is shed, that's a mystical connection thing going on there. You're talking about a battlefield or maybe a murder site or where something bad like that's happened. Wherever blood is shed, makes it sort of like a sacrificial thing. Okay, it's very much like a ritual. I was talking the other night with some guys about the midnight game. I don't know if you've ever heard about the midnight game. But the midnight game is what was very popular for a while. I think they even made a movie about this. And it's very much like Bloody Mary, you know, the Bloody Mary thing, where you go in a room with a candle and you call for Bloody Mary to appear. What you're doing in such situations like this is you're doing a ritual. That's what you're basically doing. You're a ritualistic thing going on here. And the midnight game is very much like that. In order to play the midnight game, you got to have a pen, paper, candle, matches, and a drop of your own blood. That's a red flag right there. You know, blood. Whenever you're dealing with human blood, whether it goes to the ground or it goes in a ritual, it's still a very, very powerful spiritual thing. You know.
Oh yeah. Well, that I remember that being part of that data was it requires blood. And okay, so when we were fully aware of the history behind the land and what happened there, and that there could potentially still be rituals going on there when we went. So we went on I think it was a weeknight, you know, and we didn't think anybody would be there, you know, because the kids, just like with a lot of hometowns and small towns, this is in the middle of nowhere up in northwest Georgia. And so we like to go to places when there's not going to be kids there trying to get a thrill at night or something, you know, or it won't be the environment will not be contaminated basically by people. So we got up there, and we got there during the daytime to start off, and we went up to the ruins of this house because this house has been burned to the ground. Oh, I may have pictures actually. I can show the audience some pictures of this place. It's called Corpsewood Manor today. Okay. Oh, that's not it. Sorry, my computer slipped there. That's the Bell Witch right there. Okay, so this is what the house looked like when these two gentlemen built it with their own hands back in the day. And they had a gargoyle that guarded the front of the house. And this was deep, deep, deep into the woods. This was the inside of their home. And this is actually a picture of Dr. Charles Scudder and his dog. Guess what his dog's name was, Dennis? You'll never guess. Beelzebub. Okay, so that's Beelzebub. And so these gentlemen, they were, like I said, they were brutally murdered. Okay, and the people who did it, there were 4 teenagers that were responsible for their deaths. Okay, they had gone up there to rob them. One of them had claimed that he'd been taken advantage of when he was drunk and high, and at one of the sex parties, apparently, that kind of a thing. So they came back for revenge, basically, on these 2 men. And they said as they were all shot, and as Dr. Scudder was dying, he actually stated, he said, I asked for this, is what he said. I asked for this. And it's wild because he had painted a picture of himself, and it was him. I think he was hanging and shot or something. It was like a really morbid picture, but it actually, and I don't think anybody even knew this until later, but he had painted a picture of himself, and he was in his, like, dying or shown dead as he died that night. Okay, so he had kind of predicted it in a way. But okay, so there was that. Okay, that the house was burned eventually because the people in the town, they were just not comfortable with it. The land is very creepy up there. When my team went up there to go investigate, I don't think we were prepared for what we found, because when we got there, within the ruins, you could tell that rituals had been taking place there. There were people's clothes. There were pictures of people, of women and old women and families and stuff like that had been used in rituals. There were clothing pieces, and there was blood everywhere. Blood had been splattered all over this place. And it looked as though, like, we were hoping that it was from, I mean, I know this sounds horrible. We were hoping it was from a chicken or something. We were praying to goodness it wasn't a human, but it turns out it was a human. We found out later. So let's just say that someone, we made a video about it. The mother of a teenager contacted us because she said, whoa, that was the week that my son cut his leg. She said it was a freak accident where they went up there with a Ouija board to go try to scare each other and try to kind of communicate with the spirits there. And as they were about, he was trying to build a fire, and he took his hatchet, and when he went to go cut a piece of wood, the hatchet slipped and it cut into the artery on his thigh. And we could tell that, like, a group of people had run out of there, like a herd of elephants, because, we're trackers, right? And so we could tell something happened. We just didn't know what. And she confirmed, she said that was her son, and he almost died. But it was such a freak accident that it was almost like the land, something there caused him to cut his leg open.
To require blood, the land required blood. And wherever you have these places of dark ritual murder, definitely you would have some kind of an entity like that still hanging around wanting more blood. Definitely. It's almost like that adrenochrome we've talked about before and things like that that's associated with human blood, especially blood that's taken from people in very dire situations or under torture, extreme torture, or ritualistic type murder and that sort of thing. It's even a darker kind of a thing than just, normal blood shed in a battle or something, You're dealing with a place that wants that. It's still there. That entity is still thirsty for that, you might say.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I wanted to make that point, that it is perpetual, right? Perpetual bloodshed, because there had been Indian land disputes there before. I mean, we really don't know the full history of that land. Derrick, I know you've actually talked about, and I've talked about this before too, about how our history is not what we're taught, and potentially there were ancient Egyptian settlements all over the South at some point, right? So we don't even know what the history of this land was, but the Civil War battles were fought on that property, and the land disputes, and then those men were actually shown where to build their house with the help of Anton LaVey, from what I was told. So what was that about, Dennis? How would Anton LaVey know where to put their house? For what purpose?
Anton LaVey, yes. The Church of Satan and all that is very strange stuff when you get into that. I mentioned that the other day when we were talking about cults, that there is a big cult in Atlanta. I think I can't remember the name right off there, but there are cults all over the country. whatever section of the country you're in, not just the South, all over the United States, you have different cults, and they might not be good cults. Some of them may be sort of like the Moose Lodge. Maybe they meet, and have meetings, but some of the other ones are not near so friendly, and that's the ones you really need to watch out for, especially when you go in some of those places. Without a doubt, you got some dark stuff out there, and like I've said before, whatever is taboo, whether it's cannibalism or whatever, murdering your sibling or whatever the situation is, that's what they're up for, basically. Whatever is evil and dark and that destroys innocence or destroys people's lives, that's what they're all about. And that's what you run into when you run into these places. And that's what makes them so. This is a human evil, per se. It's got a connection of a demonic evil to it, okay, without a doubt. But it's a human evil, too. And that makes it doubly dangerous in that respect. It's not only spiritually dangerous, it's physically dangerous, too, as well.
Yeah. Yeah, there's just so much that we talk about these days when it comes to blood, and it's been in the, I don't want to say it's not in the media at all, really, just in the online. The media doesn't talk about it, but we hear about, and I don't want to talk about this tonight on my channel because I don't want to get shut down. Okay, but you did mention the word that starts with the A. It sounds like chrome. It starts with the A, right? That's been going on. I mean, it is a big part of the elites and things. Okay, and there's actually something that I was considering talking about tonight. I don't know how comfortable I am talking about this. Maybe I shouldn't. Oh, well, I'll do it. I'll talk a little bit about it. Okay, because one of our family's best friends, okay, he passed away in a fire. We think he passed away in a fire. We don't know for sure, but we went to his house. His house was burned down. Okay, and I'm not going to get too much into this story. Okay, but I think it deals with some satanic ritual stuff, and I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't talk about this because this is it's very close to home. Okay, and it deals with cults. Okay, I guess it deals with like a cult, but it's an elite cult. Okay, of a person who owns a property surrounding his home, and them flying in like celebrities and stuff once a year and having like secret parties on their property and stuff. So yeah, a lot of weird stuff going on, and then he ends up with his house burned down and we can't find him. Okay, and so we assume that he might have been a sacrifice or something, and so that's why this topic is very much important to me, because it happened. It hit close to home with my family. Okay, with this, and I don't think there was a cryptid aspect to that, but this is something that is very real. Okay, it's very real, and there are rituals being done, and they do have to do with blood. Okay, and things like that, and I'm not saying that I know, or I'm going to claim he was like sacrificed, but I don't know. I really don't know. You don't want to think it was, but these things do happen. They do happen. It's very sad.
Yeah, and my very first haunting happened whenever I was living in West Palm Beach, Florida, and I was running a real estate firm. And my office was right across the bridge from Palm Beach Island. And so this was so as I said, my first haunting, and looking back at it, I can tell that there was like a lot of dark black magic going on in like the high society of Palm Beach Island. And I was like riding my bicycle around, and this was before I knew anything about Jeffrey Epstein or that entire story. But a lot of it was connecting to the Jeffrey Epstein's story of like my first demonic haunting, and at that time I was just completely oblivious to like that whole spiritual world. It was kind of like my wake up call to it all, but I realized a lot of it was coming through just like my surroundings being like just bombarded by a lot of black magic stuff, and a lot of it does happen in the high society cultures, Yeah,
it is that, and that's what I was mentioning with the elite or the higher echelons of even, and we got to admit, Dennis, there's a lot of Satanism in our military, in our government, right? Do you hear me, Dennis?
Yeah, if you go into I lost your sound there for just a minute. If you go into the way these cults are set up and all that, they're very much like bureaucracies in that respect. They're very astute in the way they do these things. Like I said earlier, I'm not throwing off on the Masons, but it's very much set up like that. It's sort of like the different levels that you obtain, and the more horrendous things you do, the higher up the ladder you go. And we're talking about not just spiritual aspects of this, but horrible physical things that are done. And, you know, when I was in law enforcement, we were taught about the signs of ritualistic murder and all these other things that go on connected to some of these cults. And some of these cults are can look very legitimate. I'm not going to mention Scientology and stuff like that, but some of it can look very upfront, but it's hiding something behind it a lot of times, or what the real stuff's going on in the background. It's sort of a facade that you go by. And the Satanic Church, if you talk to anyone in the Satanic Church about a lot of these things, they will tell you, oh, we really don't believe in Satan. We're just using that as a metaphor type thing. But then in the background, there's some other heavy duty stuff going on besides that. So when you approach a cult, you've got the facade in front of you, the false front. Then you got to find out what's really going on in the background. I can't remember that cult that was in Hollywood that had several supposed stars with it. The guy would brand the women. They were his like slaves and doing all this stuff. You might remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Up front, it looked, I think it was called Nexus. Up front, it looked legitimate kind of, you know, but in the background, there was some freaky stuff going on, you know. So that's what you run into when you run into cults. They may not always appear to what they seem to be.
Wow, I can't believe that you mentioned that, because I was reading that when I was doing some more research today to refresh my memory on the Corpsewood Manor case. And Dr. Charles Scudder blatantly said that he's not actually, he doesn't worship the devil. Okay. And by the way, that mountain, the hill where their house is built and torn down now, it's called Devil Worshippers Mountain. All the locals call it that. That is the name of that mountain. And but he claims that he was not a devil worshiper. He didn't worship Satan, that he was actually an atheist, is what he said. He was very, very open. He said that a lot, but yet, I don't know. I think the locals disagreed with that statement, but yeah. He also drove around town with a pentagram on the side of his Jeep. And this is in a small town of Tryon, Georgia. Okay, it's like Mayberry, or it used to be back then, I'm sure. And I'm not throwing shade, y'all. I love Tryon. I've been there many times. I know a lot of people up there, but I love my small towns. I'm from one too. I'm from not far from there. And but I got to think, back in the 1980s and 1970s, that would have been a huge deal during the Satanic Panic and stuff up there in Northwest Georgia.
For sure.
Yeah, you don't have to guess about some people's affiliation on things. They got up front with it, definitely.
Yeah, they weren't hiding it by any means. But it is interesting. Now, I think Boo the Beagle was asking, what is the agreed upon definition of a cult? Can you tell us your definition of like what a cult is, Dennis? Because that's a great question.
Okay. Let's see. The cult, the definition of a cult. Actually, it's kind of, that's freaky. You kind of got a line between religion, the religious aspects, and then you have a cult. Usually, the telltale signs of a cult is they isolate you from like your family and from certain parts of civilization. They isolate you, and then they also control you. Just like that Nexus I was talking about. Can you imagine women allowing themselves to be branded as slaves? That's ridiculous. But yet they control you. It's almost like a brainwashing technique thing going on. Charles Manson exhibited that with a family. They were so dedicated to him. He was like a god to them. in that respect, but he was really a murderer in that respect as well. So that's the thing about the cults. They're like a brainwashing thing. Look at Jim Jones and the Kool-Aid that everybody drank. There's a lot of that, still going on, and you might remember the, I think it was the cult with the comet, and they all committed suicide because they thought they were going to be taken out by aliens and UFOs. So you've got different cults that do that, but they really are doing the brainwashing thing on people. That's what the main thing is. They isolate you, they control you, then they got you right where they want you. And that's what it's about. It's about the control.
Yeah, and then how I kind of see like the definition, and maybe not the full definition, but a main factor in most cults that I've seen is there's like a central figure that everyone like looks at as like the almighty, right? So it's like if I started like a cult, it would be based on my personal like ideology that I probably like gathered ideas from here and there, but essentially everyone would start following me. So like Derrick would become like the central point that everyone looks to me as like the connecting point of this information, and then everyone starts to like look at me as like a god, and then that's when like the brainwashing starts, is because everyone believes in me so much that I can start brainwashing and manipulating everyone. So usually I've noticed that there's always like a central figure, running the whole shindig.
Oh yeah.
And it's not even a intellectual, it's a surrender. It's a spiritual surrender in many ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jessica. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh no, it's okay. It's just you wonder. I'm thinking in my mind. I'm like, I'm going to be nice about this, but you think in your mind like, how can people drink the Kool-Aid? Okay, but I've seen it happen right before my eyes, and I'm not going to go there. Yeah, I'm not even going to tell you what I'm talking about. But I've seen like it's like a herd mentality sometimes, and some people they don't want to be the odd man out. So if one person does it, it's like, oh, that's cool, they're doing it, so we'll do it, right? So everybody jumps on the bandwagon, and next thing you know, you're drinking the Kool-Aid and you're going to outer space in your Adidas or Nikes. You know what I mean? So you don't want to be chasing, what is it, the lemmings, or is it lemmings or lemurs or something that you follow them off the cliff and you all go together. Yeah. You don't want that. That's why we're free thinkers here at the Cryptid Huntress channel. Okay, we don't follow the cult. All right, at least I don't. I know you guys don't either.
Well, you even have popular people like Ron L. Hubbard. He creates his own religion, you might say. That's where Scientology comes from. He was a disciple of Aleister Crowley, by the way. And they don't actually, if you look at the precepts of Scientology, they're atheists. They do not actually believe in a God. They believe that they are their own gods. In that respect, So when you look at also some of these cults, a lot of it is ego stuff going on. Look at the Branch Davidians. That David Koresh thought he was God on earth. Yeah. What a big ego trip, that is. And he was having relations with little girls, He was considered a god by these people in that respect. They were brainwashed into believing that kind of thing, And by the way, there's still Branch Davidians out there. There are still people that believe in this stuff. And, they even talked, I think, to some not long ago, and they believe David Koresh is coming back. And all this other stuff. So you got some really weird stuff out there when you get in the cults. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, tonight the focus is kind of on the backwoods cults and conjuring the cryptids, really, because I know we're talking about like the satanic rituals and the rituals that go down, but a lot of those rituals open up the portals, and they do conjure cryptids. Okay, or I'm a little concerned about these vampire cults, to be honest with you. At this point, I didn't realize that they were so rampant. They're all over the country, and I live near Atlanta, by the way. So, I understand that there may be a vampire cult in Atlanta. So, whoa!
Well, like we said before, we said many times before, Jessica, when you open a door, anything can come in. Anything. That's a broad statement, but that's what it means. If you leave that door open, just like you wouldn't leave the door in your house open tonight, anybody can just walk in. And even when you're talking about portals and stuff, that's par for the course. You leave it open, anything can come through. And I've even had some people claim that's how Mothman originated. He was conjured up. Look where he originally comes from, the Appalachians, which is full of magic. I mean, it is a very magical region. And when you talk about the Appalachians, you think about the granny witches. The granny witches are the older women that knew some tricks and stuff. They weren't really witches casting spells like Hollywood would define them, but they were very much into folk magic. That's what it was. And a lot of people call them root doctors, but they were still looked upon as being like witches, in that respect. But when we're talking about dark witches, these are sorcerers, necromancers that are into dark and evil stuff. Yeah, without doubt, they will open doorways to get things out. Maybe to go after people, to do like we said about that Dogman thing in Ohio. They maybe have been on a mission of some sort. They may be let through these doorways for a purpose, and it's not a good purpose. It's usually a dark thing.
Okay, Brown Dwarf is saying leave canned beans for the Mothman statue. What is that about? Are you familiar with that?
I went there, but I didn't leave him any beans. I should have, maybe.
Oh, this is interesting. The shapeshifters, starflower, grass rock is saying, granny witches, aka owl shapeshifters.
And Derrick's family may have run into that too with the Bell Witch thing and the cat and all that. You might remember that. The interesting thing is, whenever you're talking about a supernatural entity or someone connected with supernatural, there is that shape-shifting ability right there. That's part of the package.
Yeah, shapeshifters they're very interesting to me. Now, would you consider a shapeshifter a cryptid? I mean, depends on what shapeshifting, I guess.
I wouldn't necessarily. I mean, I would say like people could shapeshift without going like you could shapeshift from like a bird to a person, so like neither one of those would be a cryptid. So but maybe you could go from a person to a Dogman, and then you would be falling under the cryptids.
Yeah, well, there are places all over America that people suspect that backwoods cults and satanic rituals are responsible for their cryptids, and that includes Goatman, actually. Okay, I want to pull this up. Thank you, Donnie. I see you down there. Let me pull that up. Thank you, Donnie. Wait a minute. I too think that I'm God on earth. Oh, dang. I think I'm screwed. Hey, Donnie. They're funny. Thank you for that super sticker. I appreciate that. But there are people, I mean, I found countless articles online of people who suspect that local cults or satanic groups, I guess, are conjuring Goatman, okay, Pan. And I've heard of people doing, movies and putting rituals into the movies and not really telling the audience that they are actually being a part of that ritual, and then potentially going home and having attachments to dark entities on them and stuff. Are you familiar with that, Dennis?
I consider Goatman to be an elemental in that respect. It's very elemental to me. And it does look like the god Pan that people worship back in the old times. There may be a reason for that, definitely, but it has a very elemental feel to it to me in that respect. What do you think, Derrick?
I don't know a lot about Goatman, but I definitely see a connection of dark magic and cryptids. To me, 100%, there's a definite correlation. It just makes sense, really. Like, you're doing dark magic, you're going to bring in these dark, or open up the portals for these dark entities to come through. And I definitely see a connection to like demonic entities taking on half animal forms. Like, as I said before, it's like the human the human soul. It's like a human soul that maybe once was human, but it has like diverted like backwards from its like evil deeds, like various lifetimes. So whenever that soul comes through a portal, it no longer is like pure enough to be fully human. So therefore it's going to be like half human, half dog, half human, half whatever, you know,
hybrid.
Right. Because it's like it's a soul that has been like sank so low into existence that that's the only form that it can take on, and therefore, and why can it only take on those lower like forms is because it is a dark soul, and it's because it's done so much evil, it no longer like is allowed to be fully human. So it would make sense that like, oh, here there's these people doing these dark magic, satanic rituals, opening up these portals and doing deals with these demonic souls, and those demonic souls, they look half animal and half human. So to me, it all just kind of makes sense that there's that connection with the cryptids.
Yeah, that makes sense. Jose says, if the goat man is an elemental, does it have a strong attraction to sexual energy?
Absolutely. Yeah, because
Okay.
it is an earth elemental. And what is more earthly than sex? Okay, that would be a direct tie in with that. Absolutely. And it would also probably be connected with sexual urges as well, because it being an earth elemental in that respect. Sort of like the dryads you hear about, and some of these other things that are supposedly out there. They're very elemental too. But some of these things are connected to different elementals, are connected to different things like fire, earth, water, air, etc. He would definitely be an earth elemental.
Yeah. That's okay. So I don't usually talk about this. Okay, the SEX word. Okay, I don't talk about that very often on my show. But this is a part of the rituals as well. Okay, and I've had conversations with at least one or two people about wondering if the cryptids are attracted to that. I guess you can call it magic, or that energy that two people, when they get together, you know, it's like a sex magic, I guess you could say, right? Would that attract cryptids? You know, because we're watching all these scary movies, horror movies, where people, it's always what, like the young girl and the guy in the back of a car seat, right? Like the back of their car with the windows all steamy. And that's when
you
the
never
monsters
ever stop in a horror movie. You never ever stop to have sex. Okay, you don't ever do that. That's a dead giveaway. You're dead meat. That's it. But here's the interesting tie into that, psychologically wise. It's like you're doing something wrong. Okay, that's the way they kind of feel like it. More realistically saying this, you know, that you're doing something wrong in the middle of a bad situation. That's not right. That's not wise. So they make you pay for it. Okay, that's the way the script writers go. All right. But anyway,
yeah, and I see it as like, all right, so SEX is not bad or good in and of itself, right? But it's like it is probably like probably like the hardest desire for humans to overcome, that urge to do it, like just to do it for the sake of like a like it's very easy to become addicted to SEX, right? So it's like it's a natural like outlet that people can become addicted to, that can lead them into the dark side, because then they lose control of their mind, right? So I think that most of these entities who can no longer take on a full human form, and their souls are so like diverted like downwards, that of course they're going to be attracted to this like this addictive energy of humans, because you know what I mean. So to me, it also just correlates there that and not that SEX is bad in and of itself, but it's obviously like with pornography and all of that, there is a very dark side to it. And so it would make obvious sense to me that, yeah, of course, that would be a great way to like open up these portals to demonic entities, you know?
Well, and it is an energy. It is definitely an energy. And Anton LaVey talked about that. Aleister Crowley talked about that. He was big into sexual magic and all that. But here's another aspect of it as well. When you think about the sexual part of it, there have been many cases in folklore where women were raped by werewolves. There have been many cases of women and men both being accosted by incubus and succubus. Succubi that are very much demonic in that respect. And I'm not going to get deep into that tonight, but there's supposed to be, the demon, the succubus takes the sperm from a man, and then as an incubus inserts it in a human woman, you have a demon seed. That's the way that works. They would talk about a lot about that. So sex being a big part of life, just like religion. That's why the cults use religion as a weapon. Sex can be used that way as well in certain instances. Um, there are amongst the Native Americans, they always warn their women and children, do not go out in the woods alone because Sasquatch might take you off and procreate with you. Okay, that's just the way these things went. There were a lot of women that were supposed to be done that way, and some men were done that way as well. I'll put them in. I'll include the guys in that too. So you got a big, I've often said there's a big sexual connection with the cryptid thing going on as well. And one more thing about the cryptid, I can tell you this without a doubt, that the demonic can manifest any way it wants to look. Okay, it can change its reality. It would certainly could look like a Bigfoot or Dogman if it wanted to, without a doubt.
Well, that's scary. That's very scary. Well, and they can also, demonic entities can inhabit an empty vessel too, right? And I know this is kind of going left field on this, but you hear about all the cloning, and we do have cloning facilities. Okay. And if there are people who are making clones of Dogmen or Bigfoots or whatever, they could be inhabiting the bodies with demonic entities.
Yeah.
I know that may be way out there, but
no, I think you're right.
That's one of the first things, of many demonic cases I've had, Jessica, Derrick. One of the first things that always pops up, most of the women involved with it are sexually molested by these things. Because I'm not saying the woman's the weaker vessel, but it seems to be women are very emotional in that respect, different than men. Okay, put it that way. I'm not going to get into that tonight. I don't want to step on any toes, but women are connected more emotionally than men to sex in that respect. And it seems to be that that's their weakness that these demonic entities go after, more so with the women than they do the men. But that's the way they roll.
Wow. That's interesting. It's interesting. I think it's important that we talk about it. I do. Because I don't talk about this very often at all. And Starflower Grass Rock, thank you for that super sticker. I appreciate it. Go ahead, Derrick.
I have woken up one night with something. It felt like a demon, but it was like some entity on top of me trying to have sex with me. Like legit. It was weird.
Yeah. Wow. That's got to be pretty terrifying.
It was extremely terrifying. Very, very. And like I went through a period of having like intense nightmares, and just like at that point I had not yet learned how to cast those things away. I was just kind of like an open vessel to like, because I was interested in these things just like naturally, and then I guess like my whole like ancestral lineage, and I don't know, so I was just like kind of like an open book, because I was in, and I wasn't really like scared until I had like I could like feel the entities around me. Then it became very terrifying. But yeah, and obviously I think that sexual magic can also, I just want to make the point of, I do believe sexual magic can be used for the holy side of life too. But I'm also like, let's be real, everyone, like most humans are not using sex to purify your soul. Most people are using it just for the strict pleasure of it, So I just wanted to make that statement about sexual magic.
Wow. That's wow. That has to be just terrifying. I actually I had a good friend of mine who contacted me one day, saying that his girlfriend, he was looking for help. He said that his girlfriend was being attacked, just like you were, at
Yeah.
night. And now he eventually told me, I don't know. I don't remember exactly. There was something odd about it. Okay, but she was terrified. It doesn't matter what she did for a living or anything like that, but it may have involved something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was kind of like, it was almost like I had to ask, like, had she opened herself up to something, because Dennis, I have a question for you. Do you have to open yourself up to these things and almost like give it permission in some weird way, even if it's subconsciously, to be able to attack you, or do they just attack you just because they want to?
Yeah, you can do these things by opening certain doors in your life. Certain things that you do, you have to be very careful. I've talked about the four gates, the emotions, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and mentally. Those are the four gates that you have to guard against these sort of things, okay? If you got those four gates secured, you're in a pretty good position against these dark forces that may come against you. But you got to work on those. You got to have that balance. I call it a balance. Everything's got to be balanced right. Or a vibration of the balance has to be correct in that respect. If you watch those four areas in your life and be careful who you let into your life and the things you do. I've had people say, I happen to be alcoholic and I'm on drugs and all that. Why is every bad thing happening to me? Because you open the doorways to that. That's what it takes. You open the doorways, and the demonic doesn't just try to get a foot in the doorway. They kick the door open. Okay, when they have that opportunity, if that door is open, they'll come on in. Do not give them that opportunity. And I say this to a lot of people: you do not feed the beast, because they live off of negativity and acknowledgement. That's what they want, and the more they feed, the stronger they become. You cut their feet off, and weaken them in your life, or whatever the situation may be. I've had a lot of people come to me, like Derrick is talking about, that are attacked in their sleep. There's a paralysis thing going on. And these can be very dark negative forces, and it's not just sleep paralysis. Sometimes these are spiritual attacks. And it's not just a physical thing. It's not a psychological thing, although there are some that do that. There is some of that going on, of course. But sometimes these things are very malevolent in how they do people. They even try to suck the breath out of people and do all these bad things to them. Those are definite spiritual attacks. But you got to ask the one important question: why am I being attacked? Am I doing something that's causing this? And most of the time you are. And you need to take care of that situation so that this won't happen to you, or you will be stronger in the end. It's like I was listening to what you were saying, Derrick, and there's one good thing about it. You seem to have a more positive attitude about that. And that's what it takes. It makes a bumper. I call it like putting the force field up in Star Trek. The fields come up. You got that positive force field around you. That's a bumper that will help keep this stuff off of you. But don't depend completely on that, because you got to work at it.
Yeah.
You can't sail through it. You got to work at it. You got to work the boat to sail through it. Okay, that's the way it works.
And at those times in my life, I definitely had some doors open that I was just completely like oblivious to, and it took a while, but I eventually like realized like how to, like, as you're saying, like, close the doors and put up the buffers and eliminate this and that out of your life, and just kind of like clean house a little. And a lot of it too, honestly, was like, the main thing for me is the energy of fear and the frequency of fear. It's like as soon as I could feel it, because I had never dealt with these things before, I just like was terrified. And as soon as I like got into the zone of being afraid of it, it just like would like absorb me, to where now it's like not even around me, but maybe like if I can feel it like a mile away, I can just go ahead and start like going into like a state of like joy and just like happy and like stay happy, and it doesn't even get around me anymore.
You know, I
Not
tell
saying
people
that,
it's Derek. I tell
yeah,
people it's like riding a horse. I don't know if you've
yeah,
ever rode a horse much. I love to ride a horse ride. Okay, you got to do something about the horse first. The horse has to know you're boss and you're not scared of him because he can smell when you're scared of him. He will take
yeah,
advantage of that, you know. But as long as you're in the boss saddle, you're okay. That's the way
yeah,
that works, and that's the way you have to deal with these things as well. Don't let
yeah,
them spook you. Don't let them scare you because most of the time their power is in trying to spook you, trying to get you off center, trying to scare you, trying to worry you, or whatever
yeah,
situation is. You don't fall prey to that. Don't fall for that trick. It's an old trick. It's all a lot of show stuff, okay, to
mhm,
try to get you where they want you, and that's
yeah,
what you have to watch out for.
yeah.
Well, all I have to say is, may the fourth be with you. You said
Uh,
something about putting up your force. I
okay.
cannot hold back, y'all. I'm always thinking of jokes in my head. But yeah, it is May the Fourth today, by the way. So, but May the Fourth be with you. And to put up those, and it seems like you are super. You seem super high vibe to me. Okay, Derek. Like you seem like you have overcome a lot. You know, and I feel like with myself as well. You know, we go through these things. We have these really dark experiences throughout our life, but it's so almost like so we can see the light and be the light down the
Yeah,
road. You know what I mean? Because
definitely.
I too have had some dark experiences in my life, but it made me shine a little brighter today. Okay, because I've experienced the dark. You know, so I feel
The
you. Is
light's
all
a
I'm
whole
saying.
lot more. The light's a whole lot sweeter once you've been in the dark. Definitely, it helps you in that respect. But your own spirituality is what you have to work on and strengthen all those four gateways. Guard those four gates. That's what you need to worry about. That's the main thing.
We
Yep.
do. Black Dragon, thank you for that super sticker, by the way. I appreciate that. Yeah, we had to put up our shield, put on that full armor of God every day, right, Dennis?
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, man, I knew I brought the right people on the show tonight. I knew it. I knew it. This is amazing. Derek, I'm so glad that you were able to come and hang out with Dennis and I tonight.
Me
And
too.
do you guys have any like final thoughts on the cryptids? And so I know we've gone, how long we've been on? Almost an hour and a half tonight. So I'm not going to keep you. I know it's getting kind of late over here. Do you guys have final thoughts? Derek, you go first. Any final thoughts on like what we talked about tonight or how you're feeling
Um,
right now?
I mean, I'm honestly like new to the whole cryptid world, but it's interesting how I don't know, like the way that I mean, I don't know if I'm psychic or not, but it's just like I have a way of like things come into like my just like awareness, and it usually ends up, it always eventually ends up like coming full circle to where I'm like, okay, that information was actually correct, and so I say that because of the topic of cryptids. I've never really, I mean, I knew about Bigfoot, but I didn't realize how like big the whole cryptid world was. I didn't know about dogmen and so forth. But it's interesting how a lot of my experiences do kind of tie in to cryptids, even though I never even like realized that the connection was there. So thank you, Jessica, for bringing me into the cryptid world and
Of
having me on your
course.
show. It was very fun, and I look forward to learning more about it.
Thank you. Well, hey, you know what? Now I know you have some inside scoop on the LBL, so we're gonna be talking more often, Derek, and I'll probably be bringing you on the show some more if you feel like it. I've had
Yeah,
a blast with you. You better come back and hang out
I
for
will.
sure. Okay, good. And we have Bryce to thank of Esoteric Atlanta, so I'm gonna hit her
Thank
up
you.
tomorrow and be like, thank you, Bryce. Okay, Dennis, what about you? Do you have any final thoughts tonight?
Well, I won't say this. It's kind of brief and short. Okay, the brighter your light, the less the darkness will affect you. Okay, and that's the thing to remember. And if it comes when it comes to cryptids, there's a lot of things out there. I call them the creatures of the night that are not really naturally occurring things, and we need to understand that what we run into may have that definite supernatural connection to it, without a doubt.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I don't want anybody to be scared about what we talk about ever. I think that we need to be aware of what we've got going on around us, and just always keep your head on a swivel. Stay protected, spiritually, mentally, physically, however you need to do it. Just take care of yourselves, and let's take care of each other as well. You know, I think that's important. And yeah, I am just so thankful. Gosh, we had a big old crowd tonight, y'all. A lot of people here in the chat and watching on all the different platforms tonight. So I hope everybody has learned something. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank everybody for all the input in the chat tonight. It really does add to the show, and it really does help a lot. And your infinite wisdom, Dennis, man, thank you so much for joining me. And Derrick, I am so glad I got a new friend up at the LBL. Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. Well, yeah. Where can people find you, Derrick? Do you have a YouTube channel that you'd like to tell everybody about?
YouTube, I think I have like 4 or 5 videos. If I ever get inspired, I will post more. I have no idea if I will, but I plan to. I just don't know when. As I said, if I ever feel inspired, you'll see some more videos pop up. But you can find me on YouTube. My name on there is The Sun Beamer. And also The Sun Beamer also on Instagram, if you want to follow me there. It's not too exciting, but feel free.
Awesome. I've subscribed. So I am a subscriber over on your channel. Thank you, Derrick. And you too, Dennis. Dennis, you are an author and have books. And can you tell the audience where to find you and where to find your books and your podcast?
Yeah. I'll be on Hunting the Shadows, my own podcast, which is on Wednesday nights at 9:00 p.m. We'll be talking about agents of tomorrow. Are they walking among us today, manipulating our timeline? We'll be talking about that. And then Paranormal Point of View on Friday night at 8:00 p.m. All of this is on the Hunting the Shadows YouTube channel.
Yes. Excellent shows you're putting out, Dennis. Thank you so much for that. And you guys, please come see me tomorrow night. I'm going to be on Spaced Out Radio. I have my friend Brian Minnick of Montauk is Strange coming on. He just released a new book recently in the past couple of months called Montauk is Strange. And he has been a lifelong researcher of Montauk, where Camp Hero is, where it was the home of the Montauk Project, aka Stranger Things. You guys might know Stranger Things. I was at the arcade tonight with my son before the show, and I played the Stranger Things pinball game. That was my favorite game there at the arcade, y'all. I've got pictures. I'll post them later. Okay, but yeah, y'all come see us tomorrow on Spaced Out Radio. We're going to be talking about Montauk, home of the MK Ultra mind control programs and time travel as well, Dennis. Okay, so and teleportation and stuff. So it would line right up with what you're going to be talking about. Okay, so, and then y'all come back and see me next week too. I'll be here. But for now, everybody have a wonderful night. Derrick, thank you again. Dennis, thank you again. I will see you guys tomorrow night. Y'all stay safe out there. Lock your doors. Keep your head on a swivel. All right, we'll see y'all later. Bye, y'all.